Charlani here, and thanks so much for tuning in. In this video, I am going to show you how I make my beef stew, or you can make it as a pot roast. Either way, it comes out super, super yummy. So if you would like to know how I did this, let's get into it. I start with 3 cups of beef broth. This is the Good & Gather brand. You can get whatever brand is your favorite, will work just fine. And then I sprinkle 1 tablespoon of unflavored beef gelatin, and you'll just let it sit right there on the top and it'll get nice and thick as you kind of get all the other ingredients together. I preheat the oven to 325 and then get everything else ready to go. Here I'm using chuck tender roast. Any kind of roast works just fine, but chuck tender roast, which I get, this is from Target. It is a little bit more expensive to buy your meats at Target. I bought this there because just convenience, but I did like that there isn't a lot of fat that I had to trim off of this. In fact, there wasn't any fat that I trimmed off of it at all, which was really convenient. I like to cut the meat into like 2-inch pieces. I think that's a perfect size for it to kind of stay together yet still fall apart. And if you wanted this to be a pot roast, obviously you would just keep this as a roast and not cut it up into pieces. And then you can just stick this whole thing right in your pot, which would be just fine too. I like to use avocado oil. I get a couple of tablespoons down there at the bottom, and then we're just going to brown the meat. If you were going to keep this in the roast, you would just put the whole roast in here and just make sure that you're browning all of the sides. It just kind of holds its flavor. And then what I'll do is, this is kind of where I put my seasoning in. So I do garlic sea salt. It is absolutely my favorite seasoning. All in all, it's about a tablespoon of garlic sea salt, which I know kind of seems like a lot, but you gotta flavor your meat if you want it to taste good. I've got regular black pepper, same thing, probably about half a tablespoon here. But this really is the only salt and pepper that I put in the entire pot. So we get it nice and mixed up, and then we're just gonna kind of let it sit in this pot while we get everything else together. Now, I am a let's keep it as simple as possible, and how many things can I have in my pantry that don't go bad? And dehydrated garlic is one of my absolute favorite things ever. You can use fresh garlic, of course. Here I'm using about 6 teaspoons, which is about 8 to 10 garlic cloves. So it's just preference. If you like garlic, then add more. If you don't like garlic, add a little bit less. That's the wonderful thing about cooking, is you can absolutely make it your own. So we're giving this just a quick stir so that we make sure that we get all the sides of the meat nice and brown. Here I'm using carrot chips. If I would have had baby carrots, I would have used that too, just because you don't have to do anything with it. You just stick them in as is. And again, I'm all about convenience, and whatever I can get a little help with, especially with chopping up the veggies, that's definitely what I am going to do. So then we've got some celery sticks here, and these I will cut up into about 1/2 inch to 1 inch chunks. That way they will cook down, and I won't have like a really big, huge piece of celery in my stew, but it gives it a really nice flavor as well. I am using a Cutco knife. I think Cutco knives are absolutely the best, but I always also say don't try to be a hero and go really fast, because holy, these will slice through your finger really, really quickly. And I will also add that the sharper your knife, the safer it is, because it'll cut through things without slipping and sliding all over the place. So I've got 1 big tomato here. I just, again, dice it up into about 1-inch pieces, and these will break down in the stew and give it a nice, yummy flavor too. You can also add in bell peppers, any kind of vegetable that you like, turnips, like all of that is really good in a stew. So you can throw all of those things in. And if you've got veggies that are going bad in your fridge, a stew or a soup is a really good way to get rid of them without having to throw them away. They'll just cook down and add a lot of flavor to whatever it is that you're making. So here I'm just peeling my onion. I always take that outer skin off, and we'll do a rough chop here. I don't dice up my onion. I usually keep it about a half inch to 1 inch pieces, and just do a really rough chop with it because I don't mind bigger pieces of onions in our stews. And this brings in so much flavor. Any kind of onion will work. This obviously is a yellow onion, and I just love the way onions smell, especially when they're cooking. It smells so, so good. And just a side note, if you're somebody who gets stressed out with cooking, prepping your food and chopping everything up before you actually get started will relieve a lot of that stress and anxiety for sure, because you're not rushing, things aren't burning and waiting for you. So there I've just taken out my meat, I set it aside, and then in that same pot, I've actually taken out any of the extra liquid. I added a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, and in goes the celery, the onions, and the tomatoes. I have set aside the carrots. I'm going to put those in when I do the potatoes, but I want to get these going first. And this is also where I'm going to add in all that garlic. And this is when your house is just going to smell so, so good. One of the things about cooking meals that take all day to kind of cook and get really yummy, like soups and stews, it just makes your house smell so delicious, and just the anticipation of dinner, right? You get to smell it cooking all day long. So last time we made a pot roast, I actually just threw in a sweet potato that we had sitting around. It was about to go bad. So I thought we'll just throw it in here and we'll just see what happens to it. And it was such a happy accident because it gave it a sweet flavor, and it also thickened up the broth. It was just super, super yummy. And then these are just regular russet potatoes. I cut these also about 2-inch pieces. I feel like that's a good size to kind of keep them together, but still cook all the way through evenly. And then we've got some apple cider vinegar, just 1 tablespoon in here. And if you don't like the taste of apple cider vinegar, then just don't add it. You don't need it, but it does add flavor to your stew and it keeps it healthy. So in went the beef broth with the gelatin. That's kind of what is going to really thicken this sauce up. And then in go the carrots, the sweet potatoes, and the russet potatoes. And now we're going to add the beef back in, and the rest of the seasoning is we're gonna do bay leaves. I like to do 4 bay leaves, and I just kind of throw them randomly in there. But I love bay leaves. Bay leaves are also really good to put in your spaghetti sauce. Like when you make spaghetti sauce, I absolutely love them. Don't eat them though. It is not a good texture for sure. I'm adding in about 1 teaspoon of thyme, and that is it. That is all the seasoning that I add to our stew and our pot roast, and the flavor is phenomenal. So you can definitely make a stew from scratch without having to go out and buy the packets that usually have a whole lot of salt in them. At least this way, you're in control of how much sodium you're putting into your foods. So now I'm going back in with a little more liquid just to kind of top this off. And I like to make sure that I cover everything that is in the pot. In hindsight, I would have actually added another cup or 2 of beef broth if I had it, but I didn't. So I'm just kind of pushing everything down in here so that when it cooks and when it gets into the oven, all of those juices will be incorporated into all the things. So we let it sit here and we bring it up to a boil, and then we turn the heat off. We're gonna cover it, and then we're gonna go ahead and get it into the oven to bake up for the next few hours. So while we've been prepping, the oven is nice and hot, 325 degrees, and I check in on it at about 1.5 hours. Total cook time is about 3 hours, so about halfway through I go in and I give it a nice mixing. Oh, smells so good. Give it a little bit of a taste test. Make sure that you've got enough salt, pepper in there. If you need to add some, add it in, and then go ahead and get it right back into the oven for the rest of the baking time. And there we have it. This is absolutely one of my very favorite stew recipes, or pot roast if you want to make it as a roast. It is so yummy. This will last us for definitely a few days, and it's also really good to kind of prep up, and this is great meal prep. You've got your healthy carbs, you've got your proteins, you've got some healthy fats in there, veggies, all the things. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't subscribed to Charlani TV, I would love it if you did. I hope you're having a great day. Bye.